I now give the floor to Ms. Danai Gurira.
To inspire the audience. But in your privileged position, as members of the Security Council, you get to hear directly from real-life heroes. I would like to take my time here today to pay homage to them and make sure you do not forget their stories.
Hello? She's the lady from the film, right? The Black Panther.
From what?
From the Black Panther movie. Remember that Black Panther?
Can I request to switch off all the mics? We have an echo sound. I think it's Miss Mlambo microphone. Please switch off. Ms. Gurira, please continue.
Oh, okay. Thank you. When we tell stories on a page, a stage, or the screen, we often use our heroes to inspire the audience. But in your privileged position as members of the Security Council, you get to hear directly from real-life heroes. I would like to take my time here today to pay homage to them and make sure that you do not forget their stories. Earlier this year, you heard from Wafa al-Saidi in Yemen, who regularly crosses the conflict front lines to provide medical assistance to mothers whose children have survived so many bombings that they are now fearful of the sound of rain. In a meeting like this, she asked you to put an end to the direct and indirect support to military operations in Yemen. You have had the opportunity to meet Nujeen Mustafa, a young Syrian woman born with cerebral palsy and famous for traveling from Syria to Germany in a steel wheelchair. Speaking on behalf of women with disabilities in wars everywhere, she told you, "Nothing about us without us." She is one of the 10 Syrian women from civil society that have addressed this Security Council in the last year and a half. You heard from Clemencia Carabali, who has been defending the rights of Afro-Colombians for almost a quarter of a century, and had recently survived yet another assassination attempt. She told you that women are being killed for defending the human rights and territories of their communities, and she gave you names, dates, and details. There was Ridal Al-Touboli from Libya, who lost many activist friends, but refuses to be stopped or silenced. When she's not teaching at the University of Tripoli, she spends every minute she has mobilizing women and calling out men in power to let women take their rightful seat at the table. She told you that in the name of preventative diplomacy and state building, the international community often supports troublemakers instead of peace builders, and gives power and legitimacy to violent minorities instead of empowering the peaceful majority, which is an eloquent summary of what women, peace, and security is all about. You listened to the bright and talented Ilwad Elman, a young Somali woman whose family escaped the civil war after the killing of their father, a human rights activist. She managed to make a life for herself in Canada, yet decided to come back to her country of birth alongside her two sisters, all three of them determined to help peace in Somalia. Ilwad told you that peace talks that focus on warlords and reconciliation processes that mainly engage political leaders while excluding women-led civil society groups are doomed to fail. The last time that Russia resided over an annual debate on women, peace, and security 4 years ago, you invited Rita Lapidia from South Sudan to brief the Security Council on a day like today. When she was 7 years old, Rita would run to the riverbank on the Nile to stay away from the shelling and the artillery drowning out all the other sounds in her native Juba. And yet, like Ilwad Iman, Even though she was able to escape the war, she came back to her country as a young woman to organize thousands of women for peace and contribution directly to peace negotiations. She asked you to put pressure on parties to include women not just in peace talks, but in all the mechanisms set up to implement and monitor these agreements. And she said, South Sudan is becoming a living hell for a lot of women. And in my opinion, this should not be happening on your watch. This was 4 years ago. Excellencies, one of the things that these real-life heroes have in common is the conviction that inclusion is our only way in these dark times, and that equality between men and women in decision-making is the only way we will build peace. The United Nations and this Security Council have been pushing this idea for the last 20 years. And there has been some progress, but not nearly enough. 0.2% of aid for women's organizations is not good enough. 19% of seats in parliament in conflict countries is not good enough. Male-dominated rooms in the 21st century should be embarrassing to all, not least to the men in those rooms. $1.9 trillion in military spending is not making us safer today. The stories of these real-life heroes are inspiring, but they should have more support from everyone else. Most of the times, when women make their mark in spite of impossible odds, it's not because they were given the space or the opportunity, but because they protested against their exclusion and persisted. Liberian women went so far as barricading a hotel full of warlords and preventing them from leaving until they signed a peace accord after 14 years of gruesome civil war. Women like them will continue to rise and to fight for peace. But they should not be doing that on their own. Even at this time of enormous uncertainty and loss of the trust of authorities and institutions, people expect global unity and multilateral cooperation more than ever. Women that you have been inviting have been inspiring stories and have had a powerful message. It is now your turn to show that you've been listening. And just like they keep showing up for peace, it's your turn to show up for them. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Gurira for her briefing.